Hey guys, Small Town Atheist again. Um, I thought I'd give you guys a little bit of a background on me, and so that way you'll know, where I'm coming from when you're watching my videos and reading my blog posts and all that kind of good stuff. My experiences with organized religion started when I was about 17 or so. Um, Before that time, I really didn't think about, the matters of faith or the big questions like, where do we come from and why are we here and anything like that. Most kids that age are really only focused on one thing. So I wasn't raised in a Christian home or really a religious home for that matter. Um, my grandparents who raised me, they never prayed before dinner or they never went to church or no one in my household really even spoke about God or the Bible or the wonders of heaven or anything like that. Um, though my grandmother was brought up in a Catholic school, she didn't really have any religion as far as I can tell. But like most of America, apparently, uh, they did have some sort of a belief in God. My family did, believe that, you know, just the general watered down sort of, the comforting kind of belief. So my upbringing really didn't foster the need to seek uh, any god or religion or anything like that. Um, it was just kind of there, almost like one of those. Uh, you know, you, it was there. You just don't think about it, and you don't. It's not something that you question with people or talk with people about. It's just it is. My involvement with the church really began a couple of years before this time. Um, a buddy of mine had invited me to a pizza party with him at his church. He he had sold me on the idea that his youth group was having a pizza party and everything, and so I just assumed for some reason, that it was just going to be a pizza party that just happened to be at a church. Um, and he may have mentioned something about a service, but I think he emphasized more the pizza and not so much the church. So in my naivety, I went for the pizza and the girls, and got thrust into my first full blown church experience. Now this was the first time that I'd ever been to a church service by myself. All the other times I had been with family and with friends and things for funerals and graduations and stuff like that. Yeah, graduations. When you live in a small town and the the largest building in the whole fucking town is the church, then that's kind of where these things take place. And I'd always had my parents or my grandparents with me. Um, and this particular event was one of those, big Baptist revivals. A true come to Jesus meeting. and in my youth and my naivety, I came to Jesus that night. So now I was saved. I was now somehow part of this world that I never really knew existed before. And I I really didn't understand what all of this meant, of course. But as most kids do, I I respected the the knowledge, or at least the perceived knowledge, that I thought these people who were older than me had. I thought that, hey, they know more about this stuff than I do, and they've probably taken the time to, to look this over and check facts or whatever, and so yeah, I trusted them. Well, the friend who had suckered me into going that night, as I'm sure, now looking back on it, he he was probably asked to do so. You that's what they do. You try to get as many new people into the church as possible, and offering pizza parties and things like that is a good way, especially for a youth group to to try to get more people in. Um, but anyway, my friend, he wasn't really that religious to start with. I mean, he'd go to church every now and again. His mom was a big church nut that liked to gripe him out all the time for his sinning ways. Still does. um, but even though I'd gotten saved that night at this church, and they had practically begged me to become a member, I never went back to that church again. Okay, so I've had my first taste of Jesus blood, and I really didn't know what to think. um, so a couple of years later, I'm around 16 or 17 now, and like I said, most guys at that age are really only focused or forced by nature really to propagate their genes. And I'd gotten fairly friendly with this one girl, um, and one night she was invited by one of her friends to go to this other church in town, this Pentecostal church. And of course, when she said that she was going and she invited me, of course I said yes. She could have asked me to build her a fucking house made out of toothpicks or something, and I would have said yes. But so anyway, yeah, I followed her. I followed her to that church that night, and that night I began my attendance at this tiny little Pentecostal church. It was a hell of a lot smaller than the huge Baptist one that I had been saved in, and I guess that's what appealed to me the most. It was smaller, and there was a smaller group of people that it didn't really seem as intimidating. I think was one of the major appeals that drew me there. So of course there was an altar call, and I went down with my group of friends and got saved again. Um, yeah, apparently with these people you can do that over and over again. It's quite amazing. um, but you have to keep in mind that I wasn't there because of some emptiness in my life, or some loneliness or need, as most proselytizers always assume. I wasn't there for the sweet anointing of Jesus. I was there for the sweet anointing of this girl, and that's where I started. In that church, I was in a setting where I was forced to think about these things that I really hadn't before. What is the meaning of life, and how did we get here? It was, and they'd always have answers for it. It was like being around a pushy salesman. Coming up with arguments that looked sound from outside, but and I mean, like I said, I trusted these people. I trusted that they knew what the hell they were talking about, literally. um, and because they seemed to have the obvious reasons, and they were able to answer the light questions that I had, you know, to begin with. I started swallowing spoonful after spoonful of the hollow information that they fed us all. Um, always playing on my fears of guilt and worthlessness, which I can never remember having any of before. You know, um, they slowly brought me into their world,